Heaven, hell, planes of existence beyond ours have captured the minds of humanity for generations upon generations. Few have captured it. With religious texts to poems and scripture, humanity has tried many a times to interpret realms far beyond our own. Fewer have been able to truly visualize it and reveal it upon the eyes of all those who look. Yet one was able to do that through careful artistic interpretation.
You know, when you take a look at all the artistic representations of heaven, hell, God, y- there's one artist that sticks out to me, Gustave Doré.
Paul Gustave Louis Christophe Doré, born in 1832, was a French artist who began his work of expression from a very early age.
Well, from a very early age, Doré was already producing many small pieces of art for a French paper, even things such as comics. Eventually, though, he was asked to work on illustrations for the Bible.
What can be seen as Doré's first big step into the realm of religion, he began to work on illustrations in a new illustrated Bible for some British publishers in around 1853.
This Bible was a good success for Doré, and you could early on start to see his distinct style with the wood engravings that were then printed onto the page.
Amongst Doré's different mediums for his art, wood engravings, which were then used to print onto the page, are what is seen as his most signature form of his art.
Soon, Doré was getting more and more work for different illustrations of famous media such as Edgar Allan Poe and different French and English works, but eventually, Doré wanted to do something on his own accord, and this is where we get to Dante.
Dante Alighieri was an Italian poet born in Florence in 1265, most known for his work The Divine Comedy.
The Divine Comedy was probably one of the most influential pieces of work ever produced, as it helped shape it into how many view the Christian afterlife. From hell to heaven, it touched even giving us a look at things that weren't really offered by what we would say canon text. The Divine Comedy provided such vivid descriptions of the afterlife not really found anywhere else. Like the horrors of hell and the odd otherworldly occurrences that happened in heaven. It even discussed purgatory, which really isn't touched on compared to the other ones. And Dante gave a description of what a demon was and the ideas like the layers of hell.
Inferno, the first of three parts in the Divine Comedy, and first to be written, described that of hell, and its layers descended deeper and deeper until the cold and icy center where Satan resided. This is where Dore decided to start.
In a way, there's an interesting connection in between how Dore and Dante both started each with Inferno, and then it was to be checked by a peer, or Dory's case, a publisher, and both of them were thought to be brilliant and to be expanded upon in the subsequent two parts. See, part of why Dore was so interested in doing Dante, even if that means initially funding and publishing it himself, was due to the immense rise in popularity of the work throughout France overall.
Around the time of the 1860s, Dante's work, including the Divine Comedy, began to quickly rise in popularity amongst the French people. Already having experience in religious text through his work on the Bible, Dore was in a perfect place to begin to capitalize.
By this point, Dory really began to master his craft. And you could see that with the work here and its incredible detail. It only continued to get better through Purgatory and eventually in Paradiso, crescendoing with the final piece to cap it off, the Empyrean.
The Empyrean, the final piece, where Dante finally gets to God and sees heaven in its entirety, in contrast to the piece of it he saw before. By now, Dore had made all the pieces up until this, and here he made his final mark on Dante's work.
With this piece, everything has led up to and ended at this point, both narratively and artistically. He brings everything together from both skill and quality to provide us with a piece that perfectly represents what he's done, and it communicates Dante's vision and story directly and perfectly to the viewer.
Dore's art, as seen in the Empyrean, uses many different modes and design choices to communicate the vision and the story to the viewer, the most obvious element being visual.
One really important aspect of Dory's work is really how it lacks any color outside the monochromatic scale. This means Dory really has to be extremely careful and particular in how he uses contrast to show the different elements throughout the piece. You could see this throughout the illustration. Even though the elements are quite light, since it's heaven, he still uses many areas of dark, such as Dante himself, to further highlight the lighter areas that have more importance, which makes them more pronounced. See, Dore's use of light and dark in this piece is very purposeful. I mean, look at the very center. That's the brightest part of the whole thing, and that's not important narratively, but it really is just to say, look at God.
God, the big focal point of the piece, and Dante's most important meeting of the story, some could say, as he's the one who put him on the mission to travel through each of the godly realms to reach him.
And that's not the only part of how Dora is trying to pull us into the center. I mean, the organization overall really helps with that as well. If you look closely at the piece, you can start to see these layered rings, something Dante described almost like a rose. This forms almost like a bullseye effect, directing the eyes of our viewers towards the center, towards God. And then only then do you start to pull back the layers to see the rest of the piece. Dore tries his best here to capture how grand heaven is, according to how Dante described. I mean, just look how small the Dante is in the image. Just simply trying to soak it all in. It's honestly quite a lot, you know. But Dore does a lot of small little things to communicate to us where to look, what to feel, and honestly, he does it quite well. All over the illustration, you can see many angels gathered around God in the ring-like pattern that we were talking about before. But what do you see them doing? If you look, everyone in the illustration is looking at God. Top, bottom, all the angels, and even Dante and Beatrice are looking at God. And what does it tell us, the viewer? That we should be also looking at God. There's all these important, subtle details throughout the piece that's all trying to tell us, look here. It's quite smart if you really think about how he did it.
But beyond God, what else did Dore want to convey?
Through the use of all the different modes and design elements that Dore implemented, he really wanted to convey how Dante was feeling. I mean, he's in awe of this visual buffet that's just before him, the incredible scale to which he was experiencing in God's presence, and everything was just centered around him. And Dore does this perfectly. He through everything, it's just shows up. Well, Dory did quite a good job. It's quite the mesmerizing image to look at. The detail and deliberate choices he made really emphasize what he wanted to highlight, God and Dante's emotions in this moment. And he does this incredibly well. And the inclusion of the text in the image shows that he took what he read and made sure to show that to us. At the bottom it says, in a fashion then of a snow white rose, and displayed itself to me the saintly host. Those right there are what you see. The rings are the rose that displays in a box of sorts God.
Whether it was through the dark and the light or the mesmerizing imagery, Gustave Doré was able to make pieces of art that for centuries have been influencing the minds of people on what heaven is or the horrors that make up hell. Together with Dante's work, they pair perfectly to form our modern collective imagination of what the life beyond has to offer.